Okay, now at this point, at the beginning of the third stanza, or the third quatrain, he uses a sense of allusion. He refers to things which we've come across before in both the Songs of Innocence and the Songs of Experience. He refers to a chimney sweeper's cry, every blackening church appalls. And we need to have a little bit of social and political context here. The chimney sweepers being the young child labourers who cleaned the industrial chimneys that were such a sight of London in the early days of the Industrial Revolution. Every blackening church appalls. It's a very peculiar line. The sweeps are no longer there, but we hear their cries. And knowing Blake's views about organised religion and the hypocrisy that accompanied it, the wealthy who would attend church on a Sunday and put money in the hat, or pay lip service to charity, and yet did nothing personally to alleviate the situation of the poor. And of course, in the case of the businessmen and the merchants who owned the factories and the mills, in fact made the lives of the poor that much worse. Blake is disgusted by this hypocrisy, echoing the earlier foreshadowings that we saw in the chimney sweeper and in Holy Thursday, of children who were being led into a situation from which they could never escape. And the metaphorical cry blackens the church walls. It's like something like a child's cry is such a disgraceful thing to happen in a supposedly civilized society. But he chooses to say it blackens a church wall. These are the people who should be helping the children, and yet still the workhouses and the orphanages are full. We have to remember that the rate of infant mortality and child death was extremely high in London. In fact, the rate of mortality would be very high for people in general. And he goes on to say the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. This very vivid red image echoing the red coats that the soldiers themselves wore. Again, soldiers mainly urban poor who signed up looking for a better life in the name of honour and decency and empire and all the things that the king represented or said he represented. And yet their hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. This echoing S sound, this kind of grim sibilance, which shows the sense of despair and unhappiness that the soldiers feel at being let down and being lied to. But then, by the fourth stanza, we come to the end of the journey, and the end of the journey, of course, is the end of the day. It's now night time, and the real savagery is reserved for the fourth stanza. But most, he says, but this is the worst thing. Through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlots curse. The youthful harlot would be a young, likely a child prostitute, having a child of her own, blasts the newborn infant's tear, like the superlative of blast, like an active, angry sound, rejecting the child, rejecting the crying baby who needs a mother. And of course, prostitution was a fact of life in the urban environment, particularly in London, and all the hypocrisy that went with it. Because of course, many of the men who used these girls would then return to their supposedly civilized middle-class homes, and blight with plague, the venereal diseases that they carried, would then be taken into the marriage bed with plagues, the marriage hearse. And Blake creates this peculiar paradoxical linking of two words which are diametrically opposed. Marriage and a hearse creates like an oxymoron there, where the traditional joy of marriage is immediately cut down by the image of a funeral car. And he realizes that for him there is this sense of corruption, something rotten, which of course these horrible diseases that the men caught would actually do. They would rot them from the inside. Syphilis was rife in Blake's London, and we're left with this horrible image of a dark city, but a city which in fact encourages and promotes darkness. And there's no light and no hope. We've come a long way from the potential happiness offered by the early poems in the Songs of Innocence. And by the time we get to the end of London, the remorseless sort of negativity and lack of hope is something which is profoundly affecting. So essentially, the poem is a condemnation of the city. A variety of factors contribute to making it so. In common with many of Blake's poems, it's a simple, straightforward rhyming pattern, very easy, A B, very memorable, very easy to follow, and yet the simplicity shouldn't take away from the fact that some of the things which he's saying in this poem are in fact very profound, and his vision of London is something which is memorable and haunting, and not easily forgotten. And in fact, by the time you get to the end of the Songs of Experience, which of course for Blake is a natural development from Innocence, you're left with a feeling that there's something decidedly wrong, and the city has taken a wrong turn, and everything that it represents in terms of humanity and the opportunity for the development of individuals and society itself is in fact wrong.